Oh, hi there. I'm Kat. Thank you for joining me for Chat with Kat. We're going on a journey and having conversations with people from a variety of backgrounds and experiences. And during this journey, we're going to probably laugh and smile. We'll have moments of compassion and cry. We may be angry or feel confronted, and we may be amazed and just need to ponder. So, whatever the emotion is that comes up, let's take a moment to breathe and ask ourselves why we're feeling this. And also, let's ask, what can I learn from this? So go ahead and like, share, subscribe, and make sure that your friends and family and colleagues and anyone you feel could get something from this gets to see this. So let's get on with our journey with Chat with Kat. Oh, Justin, good to see you. Thank you for jumping on. Um, I know you from Self Perfected, and I in our group. So, what really brought you into the Self Perfected world and into the community? And like, how did well, first maybe tell me a bit about who you are, because I mean, obviously, if we're going to be sharing this with people and having a conversation, they probably don't know anything about you.
Right, that's right. So my name is Justin. I am from Ottawa, and I worked for several years in animation, doing character builds or rigging and character design and all that fun stuff. Um, and what brought me to Self Perfected was some people that have been part of the group may already be aware of who Bruce and Kristen Isabel are. They're I was the best man at their wedding, and they had found the community during one of the darkest times in their marriage. And the tools and techno-tutor that they they were like at the end of their rope. They were willing to do whatever it took to save their marriage. And that was like the thing that that's probably the last thing they had in common, was that they both wanted to save it. But the therapy and everything else, like the couples therapy, like it wasn't creating any traction because the communication between them wasn't improving. And within like a matter of months of this coming in, and I remember Bruce telling me, he's like, well, Kristen wants us to try something else. And yeah, I'm kind of tired of trying new things, but hey, it's either going to save our marriage or it won't. And I'm happy to say, many years later, that it was a complete 180, a night and day scenario for that family. There are 4 kids, going from screaming and fighting for attention, and uh, the discomfort that they were all in essentially vanished, because this level of misunderstanding was broken down, and ended up now they're all homeschooled. Uh, Bruce was a long haul trucker, and he's been able to transition out of the truck into the office. And so at that time, it was just like the beginning of their journey, and things had changed so much dramatically, and it wasn't going back, like it wasn't reverting. So then they would be talking to me, and here I am, recounting the latest and greatest of what was going on in my life. And even though I was like in my dream job and like more money than I had made at restaurants before that, and like my relationships were getting worse and worse and worse, to a point where um like I had like the nice guy syndrome, and it kind of played into this toxic dynamic of me like allowing too much, and then that leading to a resentment because I wasn't standing my ground, I wasn't leading, um I was saying I was giving safety and space when really I was not creating a structure to allow the other person to like really flow into it. And therein created this kind of like resentment. So like I didn't really understand what was going on within myself. I didn't understand the dynamics of what I was trying to build. I felt kind of lost in that, and was accepting, I would get into I'd leave a relationship, I'd get into another one, and it seemed to be this like 3-year curse. I couldn't get out of this 3-year cycle where by like year 1, year and a half, you start realizing this isn't working, but you've invested so much, and you try to like dig in and like make it work, and ignoring the incompatibility and all this stuff. And it was just like, do we even want the same thing? Are we building the same thing? Are we going the same? Do we see life the same way? Because that was like at a starting point, we're in two different worlds. And I was trying to make it work. And it ended up bringing just more and more mental, emotional, verbal, physical abuse and violence. And to the point where I had been shown TechnoTutor, and I'd been coming to some of the calls on Zoom, the self-perfected calls on Fridays, and I was liking what they were saying, and I couldn't get my partner on board. And and she was saying, well, once we can afford it, like, then you can do that. And I'm a French teacher, so I'm able to like, I basically do this every day, thinking that it was like just the building of the vocabulary that was going to create the emotional stability. But like, if that's the case, then her education and training was not doing her justice. So but we know that there's more to it than that, and I knew that there was going to be more to it than that. So it wasn't until I was in the hospital having to recover from an injury. It took 5 days for the swelling to go down, for them to say that, oh, you don't need therapy, you can go home. Surgery. So it was pretty bad. And it was in that waiting period in the hospital that was like, okay, I can't afford not to do this anymore. So shuffled things around, I made it happen. And from there, I started using the tools and like plugging more into the community. I was seeing more and more how the stuff that we'd talk about, the stuff that was being shared, other people's stories, like I wasn't the only one, and implementing the idea of what self-perfected stands as, right? Like investigating the past, you know, working that into your present so that you can live the change, and that allows us to create our life instead of just kind of going through this cycle of reaction. Interesting that react and create very similar letters. So that was the big kicker for me, was just like being aware of it and kind of sitting in my own normalized rut, and then until I couldn't anymore. And so then I decided, time to take this a little bit more seriously than I've been giving it credence for. And it didn't really hit and sink in until I went to my first event, and that was before we had self-perfected events in person. So we were all meeting at a global information network. For anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's super cool. It's where we get to learn some of the tips and tricks that the elite employ to further their projects, their networking, their businesses, all this stuff. So we're there, and I'm observing this massive like coagulation of 60 people. And it was like always that size. Wherever you went, like there was the self-perfected group. And meanwhile, the largest other group that I had seen at this event kind of connected would be no more than 10 people for a time. And then everyone is doing their own thing. And it had such a magnitude that even other people were like, what is this? I want to be a part of what does this. And I remember being up late by the pool and just like I was having a very intense, very deep, very moving conversation with someone else. I believe it was Chantal, Chantal Modeste, before she was a Modeste. And in that conversation, I saw how each of our stories provided keys for each other to take back into our process. And in that moment, it clicked. I was like, oh, like this person and myself were not as afraid to go into the vulnerabilities. And in fact, that's where the gift is for whoever's listening. And so we were able to like give to each other in this way. And then our conversation's done, I kind of like pull back and I'm just observing around, and like everyone who's engaged in a conversation is doing the same thing. And I'm looking around and it's clicking, it's hitting that, oh, the two reasons that I had this cognition a long time ago of we will never change anything in the world, we will never solve problems until we're able to, first off, actually understand each other on a very practical level. Like, are we speaking the same language? Even in English, are we speaking the same language?
Right.
Or are you using your version of the words and they're using their version of the words, and there's all these misunderstandings, which then leads to the other part, which is this like inflated sense of ego that says like your story is more important, or like what your version of it is important, your version of the truth, all this stuff. So if you were to, your attachment to that, if anyone was to present to you new information that fit outside of that, instead of being like, oh, interesting, I have to investigate that, it would be met with, all sorts of resistance and rejection and like a very closed offness. Coming from a place of like, I need to protect this like idea of who I think I am, and you're coming in here, and if I take that idea, it pulls the thread on the sweater and everything comes apart. So I must not listen. And here I am listening to every single person, just fully surrendering to that and embracing that. And I'm like, oh, these people are working on that point of emotional stability within themselves, because they're not identifying with the character that they're playing. They're starting to identify with like just the pure potential that they represent. And like, again, for those of you who know Technotutor, like using the basics of just like, let's just build our vocabulary first. And the way that it does it, it's also strengthening the muscles in the brain, if you will, that are working on interpreting data. So like you can perceive more, you can understand more, and it's not as overwhelming, all this kind of stuff. So seeing that be exemplified and shown to me like right there, I was like, oh, this will actually, this solves that point of what I was seeing. So that's when I was like, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. Trying to answer the question of when I was a little kid being bullied in a small rural town with like 12 kids in your class. If you get the short end of the stick, you that's following you. So, and the more that it affects you, the more it's funny, so the longer it stays, all that kind of stuff. So I remember asking one of them one time, like, why are you doing, like, what did I do? Like, what did I do to you? And they're like, oh, you exist. I was like,
Wow.
what? I was like, why is this happening? Like, how can we do this? Because all I wanted was to just play with everybody. I couldn't understand how somebody could be deemed not worthy to be played with. So that led me on like being on like the outsider situation, which was a whole other character that I ended up playing. And now I'm at a point where, like, if I could go back in time and I'd be like, look, these kids have already been impulsed with, with the media and what our generations are passing down with this whole idea of anything that is different than me is not me, therefore unknown, and therefore I can project whatever fears I have from the past onto the unknown. And you're getting painted with a false image that they're buying into. It has nothing to do with you unless you play into it and then become an example of it.
Right. Wow. And I mean, and that's just it's so confronting when you realize that, right? Like as an adult, and you realize all these things that people have projected onto other people because of their fears and their doubts and trying to fit in and be normal and be accepted is just, I mean, it's incredible when you actually realize what's going on. And it's really hard to come to terms. Like you said, it's like pulling that thread on the sweater and the whole thing unravels.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So yeah, it's a little bit of a journey that started back when I was young. Moved its way through, I had a Reiki studio and everything. I was like, very much into energy work and even then, it was like getting people to that state of relaxation. I'd find wherever things felt blocked in their body, and I'd point out the patterns. And there's this, the old like Vedic traditions of like where the chakras are, the endocrine systems are tied to that. So if you could see where it's blocked, then you can point out a pattern. And I do that. And they'd be like, "Oh my God, how do you know me?" But it's just like, let's look at the pattern and what happened, what is happening that is keeping you in this state of illness. Now that you're relaxed more than you've ever been, let's look at it. And they'd see it and they'd be like, "Okay, this is the story." And then 2 weeks later, they'd come back and I'd ask them, what have you done about that? And like every single one was like, "Oh, I'll just come back and get this. This is fine. Like it lasts about a week and a half kind of thing." And and then I'll just come back for my top up. And I was like, "Oh no, like I've now become a drug."
Oh.
Right. And I was like, I can't keep doing this. And I remember my brother once saying like, "Well, like it's still like you don't know the good that it's doing. So like why stop?" And I was just like, sure, other people can do it, but I felt that there was something missing in that. Because I actually wanted to help people. I actually want to solve the point of the division. So this isn't just about a business for me or making money, which I could have just done that. Just sure, all right, come back every 2 weeks. You're a guaranteed client. You'll never actually understand the point. You'll never redirect the flow of your thoughts. You'll never affect the chemistry in your body, and your body will never heal. But I'll get paid. But that's not what I wanted to participate in. So I stopped and I said, I'll only do this ever again if I can help people over that hump of taking responsibility for themselves. Well, now I know how to help people through that. I do help people through that, but I'm not doing it in the context of energy work because although it is a temporary reprieve from like a physical sense, it doesn't solve anything. So if I can work with you instead on finding the points that need to be taken responsibility for, and then reframing that, like you said, you actually get the understanding. Like people don't understand that will actually change the way the neural nets are connecting in your brain, and that changes the way that the chemistry is then produced for your body to feed on and inform itself by, and then it restructures and it rearranges itself. And we see it time and time again in this community, people that are doing that with these tools.
Right. And it's interesting because people have this belief that you can't change your DNA, right? And it's like,
Right.
well, okay, could I change my eyes from blue to brown? Well, maybe. I mean, my eyes actually change color depending on what I wear. So,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe if I think about it long enough and hard enough and focus on it every day, maybe I could, right? Like permanently make that change. But I don't think most people have it in their mind that they could actually change their DNA because it seems to them like a fixed thing, right? So I was born this way, I have to be this way, this is the way I think, this is, like you can't
Yeah.
change that, right?
Well, okay, let's unpack that for a moment. Let's say, for the benefit of the doubt, that you cannot change the DNA, which, like, for all intents and purposes, is the original blueprint, the instructions, right? Which is just a mixture of your mother's DNA and your father's DNA. And then that comes through and it has all of the perfect expression of what you are intended to be. What we are what we are actually able to do is you are able to affect the DNA, maybe not rewrite it, but you're able to turn elements on and turn elements off. And what does that? Different frequencies of light and sound can do that. When you're more stressed, the DNA coils tighter and tighter, allowing less light to pass through, and therefore it's not activating as much. So, but when you're nice and relaxed and in a flow state, it loosens up, so all the light can get to it, activating codons that are necessary. Then there's the other aspect of DNA, which is the RNA, like the stuff that is affected by environment, by emotional experiences, because again, that's a chemical process, and the food that you're eating. So all of these things, the conditions that pass down, that those have an impression on what is either limiting or allowing the natural expression of the DNA to move through. So, okay, I'll give some geneticists the factor that, okay, maybe you can't change the original like data, the raw data of the DNA, but what is already affecting it is
like, I'm never going to be 6 foot tall. I'm 5'2" on a good day, you know? So it's like, I'm never going to be 6 foot tall. Like, that's just a fact.
Yeah.
Unless I'm
Right.
on stilts or something, you know?
Yeah, or like have that leg altering surgery or whatever, but that's not you transforming the body. And this is also coming from a limitation of what can be called our, like, you know, what we can see and understand with our mortal senses. I mean, maybe there's information outside of that, because we learn more and more that what we see and what we hear and what we know is only a very limited part of the spectrum of reality. So,
And what we're allowed to know, right? Because there's a lot of things we're not allowed to know that's not being promoted out in the public. I mean, you could find the information, you can dig and search, and you can find information and go, "Oh, wow, we had the knowledge for this, but why don't we know this as a general thing?" You know? So
yeah, and I almost wonder, like, say, so there is an element of withholding of knowledge, of education, and we see it all around the world. Like the reason we actually have inequality in the world is because not everyone has the same access to information and education, right? So that's that's the crux of it. If we were able to give everyone the equal opportunity to not just what to learn, but equal opportunity to develop how we learn, instead of what is currently exhibited in our public school systems and private school systems, which is an atrophying of a of the actual mechanics of our automatic learning system. We think that it's something that we have to, like, you know, memorize and regurgitate, and but there's actually a much simpler process that, you know, like the body is the thing that learns. Like, I don't have to do the calculation of, like, when somebody throws a baseball, I don't measure the speed at which it's approaching, how my eyes are tracking it, and when they close in, I can extrapolate where I need to put my hand and how much energy to call on to catch it, and then retract my hand so I don't shatter my bones. And, you know, all this stuff is happening on a quantum level, but it's like information that the body has learned and stored, and so it can just do it. And it's same as tying your shoes or driving home from work, and then you realize, oh, I'm done. I got home. How did I do that? Uh, you know, so
muscle memory.
that's right. That's right. So your muscles have memory, and in fact, you know how much we're made up of mostly water. So, like, that's another factor. We're made up of mostly water. We know that water is life. Water, thanks to Dr. Emoto, who did extensive studies on the structure of water and its different environments, and that you can actually affect water with words. It changes the structure. You can, a Buddhist monk blessing will create these particular crystals when you freeze it and look at it in an electron microscope. Same thing with the word gratitude. When you say "I love you," "I hate you," it becomes all like chaotic. Likewise, there's recent studies where if you introduce water to an image, so to the picture of a woman's face or the picture of a car or no matter what, and then you do the same process, it will actually freeze a really close approximation to the image that you introduced to it.
Wow, that's new. I hadn't heard that one yet.
Right. So it's not just words, which are basically a symbol that we're thinking and then putting it out, because it's not the word itself, it's the intention that you carry behind the word, which I think is another thing that blew my mind when we're with this community and the tools like TechnoTutor and stuff like that, looking at how we attach certain memories, emotional states, and everything to certain words, which has a few effects on us, right? Like if I say like, oh, I'm going fishing with my dad this weekend. Meanwhile, maybe you've never been fishing. Maybe you have a bad relationship with your dad, or maybe your dad just, like you didn't have one, whatever, and you have a negative attachment to that word. Well, in that moment, doesn't a part of you kind of like, I know for me, I'd get momentarily distracted. And based on my mental fortitude, I'd be able to bring myself back. I might have to ask them to repeat themselves, but essentially, you get pulled out of the moment. And where are you?
Yeah.
You're in the mind, and your mind is thinking about something in the past. It's not real. It's not here. It's not anymore. But I'm there, and I'm not here. And so this happens all the time in our society. This happens all the time, at school, wondering like, why aren't kids listening? I was talking to an individual the other day who was asking for some change on the street, and ended up getting into a little conversation. And he said he got let go from his job, and I was like, how come? Well, like hygiene being the big one. I was like, okay, why is hygiene a problem? Because like I do notice like, there's a bit of a smell, and I can understand how people would be. You were working in an outreach program. You're supposed to be a space of comfort and support, and makes it kind of challenging. And then he goes on to say, well, this like traumatic series of events with his mother, who every time was trying to bathe him was doing it quite aggressively. So now it's like the shower scares the living daylights out of him.
Mm.
So then we just kind of like walked through a little like very simple process of how to like reframe his mind to like just that one thing. It was like, if there's anything that I can leave you with, is just. But it was an hour-long conversation. By the end of it, he was like, wow, like you didn't preach to me. You weren't like praying for me. You gave me some real tips that I feel like it's given me hope again. And I was like, great, but just don't hope, just do.
Right.
Just
Wow.
Try this step by step. It's very simple. And if that works for you, then you can apply this to everything else.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow.
see where it
Interesting.
goes.
Are you going to go and see if you find this guy again on the street and ask him how it goes,
So
or?
I've given him my email, and he said he's actually going back home to Gaspé. His brother's picking him up in a couple weeks, and he said he'll email me then. And I do know where he is. I could go check on him, but I also know that like not everyone is going to take the action,
Yeah.
and is ready. He seemed ready, so I'm anticipating hearing from him in a couple weeks. But it would also be cool if I did cross paths with him. But I'm not going to go out of my way to try and find it and push it. It's more, there was an opportunity, there was a willingness and an openness. I gave him the seed, and let's see what he does with that.
Yeah. Wow. And that's pretty amazing that you took the time to do that, because I think most people would be too busy with what they're doing to be able to have the time to actually even listen to that person and then offer them some advice and saying, hey, you know what, here's some tips that may help you, and like, hey, contact me and let me know how it goes, right? Because I do think as we are, in our world, we're just so much. We have to get to work, we have to get to school, we have to get to these things, and because the way we're running our lives, we actually don't have time, right? So,
That's right.
uh, I mean, it's incredible that you're now able to run your life in a way that you have the time to even stop and have that conversation with somebody and be that, you know, person who can actually offer something to them, right? So,
Yeah. So yeah, now having become a part of TechnoTutor, and really like the last couple of years, seeing that really is the thing that I need to be doing. It's not just that I want to be doing. It's like this is more and more with what is going on, with what's going on in education, what's going on with AI and jobs. Like I said, I worked in animation. which allowed me enough comfort to not have to really push and build the business as well, because it's uncomfortable. It's kind of scary sometimes. But then AI has affected the job market in animation, and it's not going to improve. So I'm not holding my breath. I'm not going to try and fight other people for the jobs, because that's what it has become. I'm not going to join my other colleagues in the state of desperation that I see them in on LinkedIn, and starting GoFundMe's to help them like bridge the gap for rent and all this kind of stuff, when they gotta just learn new skills and start redirecting themselves. But it's kind of like, where do I direct it that isn't the floor falling out from under me? So really taking on, this business, it's a lot of responsibility, but yes, there is a flexibility on how I choose to express that responsibility. And there was a passage in a book I was reading called The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. I was just finishing the first volume, and the only section in there that was italicized was 2 lines, and I thought I should take note of this, was the will to be served turns the current of life against the self. The will to serve sends the flow of current through the individual and keeps the body in a state of radiation.
Wow. I don't know if people are going to get that, but that is powerful.
Right. Well, let me break that down, if I may. It's like, as an example, if let's say I'm selling something. I'm in an opportunity to sell something to someone. If I'm doing it because in the back of my mind, I'm going like, man, I need this sale so that I can pay for my rent, which is true.
Yeah.
But if that's my starting point, then it has a different feel. It's coming off in a different way. I might be listening for different cues. I might be more in my head and less here with the person. So then if I was looking at, well, the will to serve, so it's like that totally changes the starting point of, I actually want this person to feel capable of handling any obstacle, and to be able to adapt and to adjust and learn new skills quickly. And I have a tool that allows that to happen. So I'm grateful, I'm blessed to be working with a company and tools that I think, offer the best possible advantage. Whereas I didn't want to do sales anymore when I did it before, because I could never really stand behind what I was doing. It was always just about turning a profit. And it wasn't about actually helping people. And that's what TechnoTutor is. So I was like very happy to be able to look at, and I was on my way out. I was on my way. Well, actually, I'll just go back to when I finished reading that excerpt. And I'm like, this is only a couple days ago that I read this, so I'm just letting this sink in and process. I'm like looking at all of my memories where I was wanting to feel a certain way, or I was, even if like, going back to that memory of being a child and wondering why the kids don't want to play. Well, it's like, I want to play with them. Mm-hmm. But if I was in a state of service, like, how would I look at that situation? Would I just be like, oh, like they're in their own thing? Or I'd ask and they say no, I'd be like, okay, it wouldn't bother me, because I would have enough. That's kind of like, if you're willing to serve, your cup is running over. But if you feel like there's something missing, then you're going to try and fill that. And that's what I was doing. So here I am walking to the store to go get something for breakfast for my wife and I. And I'm so I was walking to the store, and the fellow that I was talking to, this is rewinding before that. The person sees me. I have my birds in a little cage in a little stroller because they need some outside time. We don't have a balcony. Like, yeah, I'll go to the store and I'll give the birds a little ride. And this
Oh my
guy goes,
God.
"Oh, yeah, oh, birds!" And so they come in, they want to ask questions. They're two little colorful lovebirds, um, and so he's asking questions about it, and I'm thinking about this mindset of like, am I in service? And at first I was like, I gotta hurry. And I was like, hang on, do I have to hurry actually, or can I take a moment and answer this person's questions? Because it was lighting him up. He was lit up, and this is the effect that the birds have on people. And so, he's asking questions, and then he wants to know how much, if he was to get some of his own. And I'm like making sure that he knows the responsibility. Birds are very social and very, they have a lot of needs, and so you have to be ready for that responsibility. It's not just like a set it and forget it ornament off in the corner that you got to feed. So that was like what I was thinking, was like, okay, like I've given in that way of like a point of consideration, but I've also given my time. So I was service. I felt good about that. And I get home and I get ready, and now I'm heading off to work to go do some door to door. And then I'm at the car and I see this person behind the building where our parking lot is. And he asks if I have a cigarette or something. I was like, no, I don't smoke. But it's the same guy. And something just prompted me to say, like, remember, dude, before you can change anything out here, you gotta change what's going on in here. And then he said something. I didn't hear what it was. I leaned in, and it was, again, that sense of service just said, go listen to this guy. So I went over, and he starts telling me the story, but he didn't have the same like lost in his head vibe that I've seen from so many other panhandlers and stuff. That he really was looking for a solution to his situation, and he didn't want to give up, but he had lost too many people recently, and it was pushing him to an edge. And I just sat with him in it, no judgment, no anything. And like, instead of the normal thought process, which have been like, every moment that I'm spending here, I'm not out there doing the thing, but I'm like, what am I doing this for then? If I actually want to help people, if there's like the fact that he was present and attentive and asking the right questions, I was like, okay, it's not like things were going around in circles and I'm wasting my time. I've learned how to recognize that, but there was something here, and I was like, if I can give him something that he can sink his teeth into, and it will create some kind of change, then shouldn't I at least try? Wouldn't that be doing my best? And then I did. And then the 2 hours that I had left to go and do my work ended up being more successful in that 2 hours than the whole 2 weeks prior.
Wow.
So there is something real to be said about when you are in that state of giving service, life is now flowing through you instead of you're trying to grab it and fill you. But it's like, but you are life. You don't need life to come to you.
Right.
You need to exude it. And that was happening. And people were feeling that at the door and all this. Even one guy was running late for his exam, but he still wanted to stop and hear what I had to say. And now is interested, so grabbed my information so that, well, I grabbed his information really, so that we can catch up later. So I was like, wow, okay. Do not discredit the power of asking yourself, am I doing this from a state of I'm needing to feel, get, experience something, or am I here to offer and give something?
Right. Yeah. That's so powerful. And I think it's really interesting because I know for myself a lot of where I was before I really got, had my breakdown to have my breakthrough, right? Um, it really was about what am I like, I'm doing this because I need to do this. Like and it was all about self-care. And not even, I wouldn't even call it self-care. I would call it self-preservation, right? It was like, I need to pay my own bills because I'm on my own and I don't have anybody to rely on. So I got to do it all myself, right? And that was always the underlying message of what was going on. And even though I heard, um, servitude, leadership servitude, and being of service, and how, when you actually are in service and thinking about the other people, how those things flow to you. It's one of those things, you hear it, you know it, but you're not living it, right? Because
Yeah.
you're caught up in that moment of yourself, of like self-preservation, right? Instead of, there's actually, what is it if I'm actually helping somebody else without anything from me in it, right? Um, but it's so powerful, and it's hard to come there because your mind says, I know this is true, but your actions don't reflect it.
I mean, this is like only really sinking in because of the many years of cultivating that I have done towards this, right? Like, it's not just that, like, happened upon this, I read this passage and like, oh, it made sense. No, I mean, like I said, I had a Reiki studio. I've like been trying to like help other people that are on the outsider vibe. And, you know, the reason I worked in animation was because it was like creating stories for people that, like, made them think of something other than the grind, and thinking that that was a noble thing at one time. And the only reason I don't now is because I see how much work we have to do to like bring each other together. And I started to see it more as like escapism just for escapism's sake. And yeah, I really didn't want to continue going down that road. So I started like digesting more, and that brought me to the community. And I've been using TT for the last 4 years now. And that has really shifted a lot of, it supported me in shifting my perspective a lot. So when I read this, I feel like there was like already a fertile ground for that to sink in. And now I want to do everything I can to try to live that example so that other people can also see what that is. So I was very fortunate that, very, very glad that it kind of worked out this week, that this interview was able to happen, because it's so fresh in my experience. So
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. I mean, I know it's one of those like, hey guys, I'm finally ready. Let's go. And then thank you for like jumping in and been like, okay, like let's do this. And I'm like, kind of a last minute.
oh, nice.
But it's
Well,
perfect timing, right? Like it's everything I'm now at, everything's perfect. It's the way it's supposed to be right now. Because
awesome.
that's what we have is now. We don't have the future. The past is behind us. What we have is right now. So this is perfect. It's right now.
Yeah, the script is unfolding as we go. We're writing it as we go. And yeah, it's like when there's a perfect example of like, you're choosing to do something uh, that, although you get benefit from hearing these stories, you're really doing it to share it with others, so that there's, and it's also like supporting the interviewees to get their story out and get the practice of being interviewed. And so there's an act of service, and it's like, eh, something else that the book was talking about is like the precursor to like making the magic happen, if you will, is need. Right. So there's a need for this message, the messages that people that you're interviewing have to get out, to show that, hey, there's something actually of substance here, guys. This isn't just like another order or organization or religion or business or something, whatever, that is um, giving us something to believe in or hold on to, despite the state of the world and the fear and whatever's going on. It's actually like, no, this is how you can see, like, this process, these tools, this community, its sole purpose, like the idea is self-perfected, to perfect the self.
Mm-hmm.
In the nature of reality, there is no set perfect state, because it just continues to change. But when you look at the definition of perfection, it's a state of finding actively seeking the flaws and correcting them so that there's as much integrity as possible. So this is about taking on that responsibility, and we have a way of doing it that's systematic, it's simple, it's effective, but it's super challenging.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Because once you start, it might feel good at first, but then you get to the deeper layers, and then the real ugly stuff comes in.
Yeah, and that's the hardest part, I think, is because you feel, like you said, you feel good doing it at first, and you see some little differences, and it's when you go and do that hard stuff, and it gets hard, and it's ugly, and and the resistance comes up, and
Yeah, like I've spent a whole day is just like having to face those demons, and like just spent like writing it out and like ugly crying and all this stuff. And I'm so fortunate that my wife sees the world the same way that I do and is a part of this as well, so that we can kind of support each other through those moments. I've equally had moments of just like profound, like full body gratitude for the fact that we're doing this work together, the fact that like we're working on having children, and we know that we can already list some of the things that we've closed the cycle on that we're not going to be passing on epigenetically, right, to our kids. So that's huge. So of course, we want as many people to be able to like see what this is. And sometimes, being able to hear our stories of like what happened, and there's a lot of similarity that I think other people will share with that. Thank you for taking the time to organize this and get our stories.
yeah, you're
But
welcome.
yeah.
I had a moment where I was like, I just need to share people's stories. I was like, I don't
Mm,
even know how this looks like yet, but I just need to share people's stories. And where do I start? Well, why not start with a group and self-perfected? Because there's so many amazing stories I know that are in the group, right? And I had actually previously reached out to a friend of mine and said, hey, I'd love to interview you sometime. But I really didn't have a thought of what it was going to look like, how it was going to be. I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to interview you, right? So it was just, there was this moment where I was like, I got to do this. I don't know
yeah.
why.
So yeah, now for my own curiosity, what was the because like we talked back in San Diego, um and like because I was working a lot, I wasn't always able to attend the calls and stuff like that. So I'm plugging back in now that I'm in full control of my schedule. So what was kind of like the turning point that kind of had you plugging in more?
Well, I mean, I was so up until that point, I was doing Techno Tutor every day. I was working on it. But I think what was really stopping me was doing the really deep dive because it was ugly. I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to go through
Okay.
it again, right? Like, let's be
Yeah.
real. When you've gone through something ugly and horrible and awful, and to somebody else, it might seem trivial, right? That's the thing. It's like for you, it's this big, deep, dark, ugly thing that's held on that you've held on to your whole life and lived through, right? Of what that was. But for somebody else, it's so trivial. And they're like, why are you even bothered by that? Like I was doing Techno Tutor every day but I was refusing to go deep. And Avery and Lisa kept telling me I had to go deep. They're like, you got to go do the work. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing the work. I'm doing the work. No, you're not. No, you're not. And they just kept at me, like, honest to God, they kept at me. But really, I had that breaking moment last year. I mean, that's
Mm,
probably about a year ago, where I had this absolute breaking point because choices I had made were not so great with finances. Um, I hadn't been, I thought I was just needing some time to figure out my life of like, do I want to go back and do project management work, working, for an office corporate structure? Am I loving that? And the last job I had, I mean, was it my choice to end it? No, but the writing was on the wall when it was ended. Was I surprised it ended? No. But did I have a plan after that? No.
Yeah, so like
And it was kind
it's
of
an
like,
interesting turn of
you know,
an interesting reflection. You're like, you're not ready to take this on. It's like, oh, okay, and then they sink, and then you're like, oh, I'm not ready.
right. And I mean, I had money in the bank because I had sold my place in Canada and I'm in Mexico, so my living cost isn't as high. So I wasn't overly concerned. But then I had made a bad investment choice. And then I, was just living off my investments and my savings until that wasn't good, until I hit rock bottom and there was nothing left. And I'm literally like realizing like, oh my God, like how did I get here to this point where I, was
Mhm.
kind of, making good money, having money in the bank and like zero debt, to like, how did I get here? And that was my breaking moment when I realized like I had to deal with this stuff that I didn't want to deal with because that was connected to my finance. And then, I
Yeah.
mean, like until I hit that moment, I was like, oh no, I guess I got to deal with this now. I got to work through it and heal from it, not just deal with it, but actually heal from it, right? And
Yeah.
actually do the work. And that's when I did the deep dive. So it was probably about a year ago that I did that. So I mean, now it's like rebuilding, and it's not a year later, I'm rebuilding. I'm at the point now where I know there's a reason that this is happening because there's somebody I need to meet or talk to, or there's some reason that I'm going to be working with these people. So I don't know what it is yet. We'll find out what the miracles are.
Yeah. Hey, as long as you are like, tapping into that state of like, am I doing this for me, or is there something that I can give here? Then you know what, that is going to flow through, and it will unfold in a way that will make sense as it goes. But for anyone listening, maybe take the precautionary tale of like, don't do like me and wait until you get kicked in the nuts so bad the doctors are saying maybe one's got to go, or that you know are living on like the survival cushion until there's nothing left, and then deciding, hey, maybe now I should look at this, right? That
Right.
you can start that change today at any moment. And the moment you make that decision, it's amazing how things start to line up and change and support.
100%. So, I mean, aside from everything we've talked about, like, is there like one, well, okay, you did mention to yourself as a child, how you would, maybe redirect things and think about things differently. But is there like one big lesson or one big thing you're like, if only I'd known this at 10 years old, or if I could go back and tell my 10-year-old self this would have had a huge impact outside of what we've already talked about?
I would have said the way you're being made to feel by your bullies are the way that they're already feeling inside.
Oh, wow.
So you can either join them in that suffering, or you can find somebody else to spend your time with, or you can try and understand. But this, so where in the production room? The only reason it feels like scary and bad and upsetting is because you're not actually seeing you. And what I would tell myself is the creativity you have, the sense of adventure you have, that has a lot to do with why some people are upset with you. Because either
Mm.
they don't have that or they want to do that, and for some reason either their parents or their situation doesn't allow them to do that. So don't take it personally, and don't take on the character of being a bully just to fit in as well, right? You have something to give to this world. Find out what that is and give it all you got.
Mm. Wow. That's amazing advice. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
But
Thank you. And is there anything else that you want to I know we've covered a lot in a short time, but is there anything else you want to touch on, or any other words of advice that you would like to give to anybody right now? Or
You have nothing left to lose and everything to gain when it comes to looking into becoming a member of Self-Perfected, going to one of the clubhouses, joining a Self-Perfected call, and the same thing of like investing in TechnoTutor, of like what we have to lose is our sense of who we think we are, but what we have to gain is like the actual like life force that is kind of filtered by that personality. We are individuals in this, but we are not personalities. The personality is something that's been sold to you, and we bought it. And if that is a triggering thing or confusing thing or makes you question what I'm saying, then that is the invitation for you to investigate it. Take a look. There's a lot of resources out there that people have been like, nothing that we look at in this group is stuff that hasn't been seen before. It's just we're starting to pay attention to the breadcrumbs and we're starting to put it together and we're starting to see the bigger picture. And when you actually have people that are taking responsibility for themselves, but the idea of the self dissolves at the edge of the personality and starts to include, because like I said, we're individuals in all of this, just like I have individual cells making up my whole body. If any one of them decides, no, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, screw you guys, I got to do what I got to do to survive, not thrive, then, and I just consume. Oh, I'm supposed to die now. Screw you. I'm going to do my own thing. And then they don't. And then that's cancer. So, reality is holographic by nature. It's a fractal. It means it's a picture in a picture. So every part contains the whole. The ocean is made up of drops of water, and in the drop of water, it's like it goes down. So we are a part of something bigger. When we think that we just gotta close ourselves off so we can survive, you're cutting yourself off from everything. And so where are you going to get the energy? Where are you going to get the support? Where are you going to get the love? Where are you going to get the food? We have to remember that this idea of who I am, this Justin, this animator, this brother, son, all this stuff, I'm not going to say they're just not real, but it's not the whole thing. And they can change. Right? I'm not an animator anymore. But I still have those skills. But I've become something more. And had I not already started to dissolve this attachment to it, when time came to get laid off, I wouldn't have had something else lined up that I had started. I would have done just like everyone else. But when I'd ask them the questions of what are you doing to prepare yourself, and they're going, I don't want to hear about it, like literally, they would, maybe be open to seeing what's going on around them. But it's that survival point that I understand we are all made to feel it. But what would it do for you or for myself if we change the idea of I can't, it's not about surviving. It's about thriving. What is it going to take to survive versus what is it going to take to thrive? And that's two very different recipes. So if I could leave anything, it's look at the difference between that and what are you living and exemplifying. And let's redefine ourselves by shifting to something that actually is going to plug us back into the flow of life.
Wow. Wow, thank you. Thank you for sharing and being willing to be a bit vulnerable on this conversation too with me, and because it's not something I think everybody does, right? We People are very guarded and don't want to show the bad points in our life and talk about it. So thank you for going there and sharing that with me today, and for anybody else who happens to join in the conversation with this and see it later. So I
It's my
appreciate it.
absolute it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you.